Before creating any change in reality, there is something that almost no one notices. The human mind works as if it had internal activation codes. Small adjustments in the way of thinking, feeling, and acting that, when aligned, begin to direct the life experience in a much more conscious way. Most people try to manifest things simply by wishing. They want more opportunities, more money, more peace, more freedom. But the universe does not respond only to isolated desire. It responds to the set of internal signals that you repeatedly emit. And when these signals enter into coherence, something interesting happens. Reality begins to reorganize itself in a much more fluid way. Some people spend years trying to force results. Others learn to activate these internal codes and notice that many things begin to happen much more naturally. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because the way of interacting with reality changed. And the first of these codes begins with something extremely simple, but surprisingly powerful. The code of clear intention. Every manifestation begins with direction. When the mind clearly defines what it wants to experience, it creates an internal reference point. It is like adjusting the compass before starting a journey. Without this definition, mental energy disperses into many different desires at the same time. Many people think in vague terms. I want to improve my life. I want more money. I want opportunities. The problem is that vague intentions produce vague directions. Reality responds much better when there is a conscious choice about what type of experience you are willing to accept in your life. Activating this code does not mean controlling every detail of the future. It means deciding internally what pattern you begin to consider normal for your experience. It can be more freedom, more prosperity, more balance, or more growth. When this decision becomes clear, the mind naturally begins to recognize paths that previously went unnoticed. It is like when someone decides to learn a new skill. Suddenly, courses, ideas, conversations, and related opportunities begin to appear more often. They were always there, but now there is a clear direction that allows them to be noticed. And when this direction begins to repeat over time, another important code comes into action. The code of sustained focus. A single intention can open a direction, but it is repeated focus that begins to strengthen that path. Everything that occupies your attention frequently gains strength within your experience. The human mind learns through repetition. The more times you return to the same objective, the more your brain begins to treat it as something relevant. That is why thinking about something only once rarely produces big changes. What truly transforms the direction of life is when a thought begins to return with consistency. Not in an obsessive way, but in a present way. People who achieve important changes usually do something very simple. They keep the same objective alive in their mind long enough for their decisions to begin reflecting that direction. And this happens almost invisibly. Small choices begin to change. Conversations begin to follow new themes. Interest turns toward different opportunities. This process transforms an initial desire into a real path within your experience. But there is an essential detail that determines whether this path truly begins to gain strength or not. Because thinking about something creates direction. But there is another part of the mind that actually activates the manifestation process. When intention is clear and focus begins to repeat, something even more important comes into play: the emotional state that accompanies those thoughts. The code of the corresponding feeling. Thoughts show where you want to go, but the feeling signals to reality whether that experience already feels like part of you or still seems distant. Many people try to manifest by repeating phrases or visualizations, but inside, they continue feeling anxiety, doubt, or pressure. And reality responds much more to the dominant feeling than to the words the mind repeats. That is why there is a simple and rarely discussed detail that completely changes how to apply the law of attraction. Instead of trying to feel extreme happiness or euphoria, begin to train a much more powerful and stable feeling: familiarity. When something feels familiar to your mind, it stops treating it as something distant. For example, imagine someone who wants to live with more prosperity. Instead of only visualizing large results, this person begins making small daily adjustments that create a sense of normality around prosperity. It can be something simple like learning to talk about money without tension, organizing financial decisions more clearly, studying opportunities without the feeling that it is too far away. These small behaviors do something profound. They teach the brain that this reality is not strange. It is possible. And when something stops feeling distant, the feeling naturally shifts toward quiet confidence. If you want to test something interesting right now, try a small mental exercise while you continue listening or reading. Think about a life experience that you would like to become normal for you in the next few years. Not something impossible, something that represents expansion in your life. Now notice one thing. Does this idea create tension or curiosity? That answer already reveals a lot about the vibrational state you are maintaining. And when thought and feeling begin to move together, another extremely important code starts to operate. The code of internal alignment. Many people desire change, but without realizing it, they maintain an internal dialogue that creates resistance. One part of the mind wants to grow. Another part continues repeating old doubts. It is like trying to drive a car, with one foot on the accelerator and the other on the brake. Internal alignment happens when this conflict begins to decrease. This does not mean blindly believing in something impossible. It means gradually reducing the ideas that contradict what you decided to build. For example, someone may desire more professional freedom, but continue mentally repeating phrases like, "This is difficult," "This is not for me," or "Maybe I cannot do it." Each of these phrases creates small internal tensions. When the person begins replacing these interpretations with something more open, such as "I am learning," "I am moving closer to this," or "This is becoming possible," the brain enters a very different state. It stops fighting the idea and begins cooperating with it. And when mind, emotion, and expectation begin pointing in the same direction, something interesting happens. Decisions become clearer, opportunities seem less rare, and life begins responding with much more fluidity. This is when the next code appears, the one that transforms thought into real movement in the world. When intention, focus, feeling, and alignment begin working together, a natural moment appears in which something needs to happen in the physical world. This is where many people think the law of attraction works alone. But in reality, another important code enters into action. The code of inspired action. Manifestation does not eliminate action. It guides the correct action. When someone is misaligned, actions usually come from anxiety. The person tries many things at the same time, forces situations, insists on paths that do not flow. Everything feels heavy. But when internal alignment exists, something different begins to happen. Ideas appear more clearly. Certain decisions seem obvious, and small impulses arise almost like quiet intuitions. It may be the idea to start a specific conversation, learn something new, change a strategy, contact someone, or simply begin something that had been postponed. What is curious is that these actions often seem too simple to generate big results. But many important changes in life begin exactly like this. One conversation generates an opportunity. One decision opens a new path. One small initiative connects you to different people or environments. Inspired action does not come from fear of missing something. It comes from a clear sense of direction. And when this action begins to happen, the manifestation process enters another very important stage, the code of openness to receive. This is a point that many people ignore. Many people know how to desire. They know how to focus. They know how to act, but they do not know how to receive. This happens because they continue trying to control every detail of the result. They want to know exactly when it will happen, how it will happen, and where it will come from. This excess of control creates tension, and tension keeps the mind in a constant state of effort. Receiving works in a different way. Receiving requires enough trust to allow reality to organize paths that you may not yet be able to predict. Sometimes the opportunity arrives through an unexpected conversation. Sometimes it appears through a change of environment. Sometimes it shows up in a situation that initially seemed like just a small detail. When the mind relaxes and accepts that the process is in motion, the field of possibilities expands much more. And when this openness begins to become natural, the final code comes into operation, the one that transforms a moment of manifestation into a new permanent pattern of reality.